Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next episode of the Huddle, a black and gold podcast. Where, let me tell you something, folks. If you're got a collection of terrible towels and if Renegade drives you nuts and makes you go crazy, then yins are in the right place, man, because we're here talking all things Pittsburgh Steelers football with your host with the most, Mr. Gage. Ryan, how you doing, Gage?
Oh, just great. That's my co-host Ron Mont. And Ron, I have a question for you, pal.
Fly. Go, 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 go.
So with this influx of coaches being hired, yes, they're replacing a lot of the coaches that they've already let go, but we're seeing them
All of
hire
them.
coordinators and fill positions that they weren't
Yes.
previously filling.
Right.
So that bears the question. Was the small coaching staff always a Mike Tomlin thing?
Absolutely. It
You'd say
absolutely
so?
was. No, I know so. He was the one that had the last word on who was in the building with him.
Hmm.
Okay. All day long. And he even had the last word when it came to players that he was going to play with or he was going to use. Because how many players got shipped out this year?
True, true.
Four players, Beanie Bishop being one of them, right?
I miss Beanie. I kind of
I
sucks that we
do
lost
too.
him.
Right. Okay. So he absolutely had the last word. Now, I think the last 2 years, or maybe the last 3 years, there was a little bit more input from ownership as to people that were going to be on the staff and or that kind of thing.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Had more input. Because I think at that point, I think they were realizing that Mike Tomlin was, I mean, we were at that point where, I'm not going to be the one that fires Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
You know what I
It'd
mean,
be the
right?
worst look ever.
Right. So he was the one that had the last word in who was on his coaching staff, and who wasn't.
Mm.
And he also had the last word when it came to players as well too. So I don't
So
know what I
I don't
don't know.
pretend to be an expert as to like the actual position coaches that they already had
Right.
uh last year and previous years compared to this upcoming year. But just hearing some of these position assistants and some of like assistant head coach and things like that, like these are all
Yeah.
things that we didn't hear this kind of talk for a long, long time in the Berg. And so I think that this like now I think it's worth noting that having a mass amount of coaches doesn't always equate to success. As a matter of fact, too many cooks in the kitchen is very much a thing to be wary of in this case. But I think that it's worth noting that we always seem to have, not seem, it's true. We tend to have the oldest or one of the oldest coaching staffs. And it's also one of the smallest or the smallest coaching staff. And really getting anything that's off the beaten path in that regard is an improvement for me. I don't know
So
about you.
that's so that's how you're looking at it. So you feel that with the influx of the younger coaching staff and some of
Mm.
the positions that weren't previously filled by Mike Tomlin. Okay, so the coaching staff surprisingly isn't as large as you think it is. Okay,
It's just larger
comparatively.
compared to previous years.
Correct. We're just seeing we're just seeing positions that other teams have filled that Mike Tomlin didn't have filled for his coaching staff. Mike McCarthy is now filling those spots out for his coaching staff.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So like,
Step in the right direction.
okay, so we all know that analytics plays a huge part in what's going on in the new NFL. Okay, and let me tell you something. If you're not on that bandwagon, you're losing. Okay,
Yeah.
because the Dallas Cowboys started it in the 70s when they designed a computer system to track guys' efficiencies and plays and blah blah blah. All right, so come on. Secondly, having these younger guys that are more in tune with using the analytics and then turning that into how to coach guys.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what I'm hoping that this coaching staff is going to be like. for the Steelers, where they are going to potential because we know that McCarthy is an analytics guy, right? And we know he's a deep dive X's and O's and schemes and the whole 9 yards, right? I am hopeful that him, because he's already come out and said that he's going to call the plays.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm hopeful that, and I gotta look this guy's name up here so I make sure I say it right. Brian Angelico?
Angelicio? I don't know.
Angelicio.
He's the guy from
Okay.
the. Can I tell you something about him real quick? Can I tell you a little bit of a
Yeah.
funny anecdote about this? So I was reading about headlines from the Steelers a couple days ago when all this went down, and I tweeted about this, and it was like Steelers hire Vikings coach Brian, and I was just elated because I was like, okay, we got Flores. This could be an improvement, and it was not
Wrong Brian.
Flores. Wrong Vikings coach Brian.
Yeah.
I was devastated.
Oh, all right, all right. Now I understand now that tweet. I understand that tweet now. Because I didn't
No,
realize.
I don't. Is he a good coordinator? I really don't know anything about him. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, well, so now I just want to kind of throw some of this at us here now, okay?
Please,
Patrick
please.
Patrick Graham is now the defensive coordinator, right? And he's got a pretty long list of places where he's been and where he's coached. And we'll see.
I've heard he's decent. That's the word I get. Okay, decent-ish, you know.
Right. McCarthy has already come out and said they're going to keep the 3-4 base defense. Right. Look, let me just give you guys a quick little throwback, okay? When Dick LeBeau came in and Blitzburgh was born, what do you think the base defense was for Blitzburgh?
3-4, I would imagine.
Yeah, baby. 3-4. And that's what I've always loved about, and that was a huge shift from the past because the steel curtain was a 4-3. Oh,
I always forget about that.
okay, right. They had 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. Okay.
I guess just in my head canon, I guess just the Steelers have always been 3-4, even though that's factually not the case. Just in my head, they've just always been 3-4 and never deviated from it.
But they've always had really, really, really good down linemen. You know, that have been impact of the game. So
it's the winning in the trenches philosophy. That's why I appreciated that Andy was brought with that in addition to getting Omar, we also got Andy because he very much had the same philosophy. Just put high end stakes and high end draft picks into the lines.
I like this kind of line of thinking here. We have wait a minute, I want to get to where these guys are here now because this is stuff that okay. This is stuff that we never had before, that we didn't hear about before. Defensive pass game coach, also coaching the defensive backs.
Yeah.
Right? It's Jason Simmons. Okay.
Jason Simmons.
Right? We're going to have a quarterback coach, Tom Arth. Right? We're going to have a wide receiver coach. All right, Adam Henry. Okay. Inside linebackers coach, Scott McCurley. All right. Defensive quality control.
That's a new one for me. I mean, not like I've never heard it before, but I've never heard it before in terms of the black and gold.
Senior offensive assistant. Frank Signetti Jr. Chief of Staff, Steve Scarinaccia?
Oh no, Steve Scarnecchia. I actually know a little bit about him.
All right, cool. There you go.
That is I believe is it Dante Scarnecchia? Did I say that right? The legendary New England coach.
Oh, okay.
That's his son, grandson. Man, I'm terrible with this stuff.
Yeah, all right, cool. Outside linebacker coach Shane Howe. All right. I mean, the defensive quality control, Pat Riley.
And I don't know how many of these names. I know a lot of them are, or at least some of them are, a good amount.
Well, you've
where
recognized more of them than I have.
the Mike McCarthy, that they're Mike McCarthy guys, or they've been in the same place with him before, and that it's a lot of him bringing in. I don't want to minimize them and say bringing in your friends. You're kind of bringing in your friends a little bit.
Yeah, there is definitely some of that going on here for sure. There were guys that were with him in Green Bay and in Dallas. Okay, a couple of them, like special teams coordinator and some of the strength and conditioning people were with him in Dallas as well. I think the wide receiver coach was with him in Dallas. You know what I mean? So this is what I was afraid of.
It's not good.
How is it all that great?
They weren't great in the playoffs. But, again, if we're at risk of being a complete podcast, it is worth noting that McCarthy had, was it 3 straight 12-5 seasons with Dallas? I mean,
and he got the most Dak Prescott
that anybody else has. Yeah,
right.
No.
Look, I'm going into this with a completely open mind. I have to. I'm going
for the sake of our sanity.
Right. Because look, we're getting a super reset here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Only not quite a super reset that we probably could have done.
Could have, would have.
But a younger coach. Because seriously, how much longer are we going to have McCarthy? Like, if he turns out to be any good, he's 62 already. How much longer do you think we're going to have him? We're going to have him for 10 years?
No, and that's what the inner rumblings of the tire are. Even Mike seems to understand that this is 4 years, 5 years, maybe a little longer, but who knows? Like, a lot of things could change in that amount of time. That's why I keep hearing a lot of people understand, including Mike, that he's not going to be for 20 years, let's say.
That's what I thought that Pittsburgh was going to do, was take the opportunity to, because they already let everybody go. Now they brought back 3 coaches. They brought back 3 coaches that were on the staff. There was an assistant strength coach, one of the assistant line coaches, or something like that. Something else, like nobody was sort of hype on the name. Like,
no.
So okay, so you bring home. This is kind of what I was hoping for when Mike Tomlin era stopped. Was let's not have that transition time. Let's just go right to the studs and get one off the tree. Okay, instead of regurgitated guy who's been out of football for years or a year or whatever. Like, it wasn't part of the last hiring cycle.
No, and I think the only team that had any interest in him for this, we're talking about McCarthy, was Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. Okay. So
and Tennessee, they were actually kind of casting a wide net that the Steelers were alleging that they were.
Yeah, sure you weren't. But so that's kind of what I thought they should have done, or felt that they probably should have done, was gotten that guy like they did the other time. I mean, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Now you got a guy who's twice as old as the last 3 coaches that you brought in here. Now, how many teams in the history of teams, period, can say they only have 3 head coaches since 1969? And 6 world titles.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't too many teams out there that can say that, with each coach doing roughly 20 years of top.
I do think this is worth noting on that, though, and I can't remember who brought this point up, but it was one of the guys from DK, Pittsburgh, those guys. And we're talking about this concept of the Steelers having this long streak, about how it was this plan that was had long coaches, and that really wasn't ever. They were kind of making it up as they were going along, most every other franchise does. Because with Chuck, they were a team that was mediocre and in disarray, and so they bring Chuck, and Chuck was 4 titles, so I mean, who's going to throw them? So they let him right off a couple 7-9 seasons. They call it that. When they bring in Bill Cowher, and Bill Cowher also had prolonged sustained success even in the postseason on deep runs, so it was very hard just to get rid of him, and he went to the Super Bowl and his wife has cancer issues and all that stuff. So when you bring Mike Tomlin, he's also very hard to let go of the fact he's always hovering at 500. He's not bad enough for firing. So this idea that they were always going to stick with their guys kind of no matter what, I think is a little bit of a revisionist history. My drift.
I get it, and I understand, but every person that has about Steelers, they all say something about the Steelers stability. And the reason why is because he's been coaching. Okay, he might have a bad season one year, but he might lose that, but he's still winning the war. The problem with Tomlin is that he wasn't winning the war after his 10th year.
No.
You know what I mean? He was winning a couple battles here and there, but he wasn't winning the war after his 10 years.
It was the exact opposite, right? Like, you had the 6 and 10 years under previous administrations where, like, you have those big lows, you also have potential for much higher highs, whereas with the most recent regime in the Tomlin era and whatnot, it always kind of felt like we were at the same spot every year.
We take it the same spot for the last 10 years in a row. Even 19th point or 21st.
Tying Marvin Lewis for most consecutive playoff losses. That flirts to me.
I hope that sticks with him. I hope that burns in him. I do. Think about that for a second. It's like when you get an opportunity to change your life for the good, and you just go, "No, I'm good." You get 7 like that. I'm sorry, 8.
Well, so, Mike, you're talking about Tomlin the last number of years. Yeah. So Tomlin started off, I think, 5-1. So it's a legitimately really good record with his only loss being in the Super Bowl. So you can only that is legitimately a place.
That's in the war right there.
100%. And after that 5-1, so it does, in fairness, does coincide with the player safety initiative where before defenses were like kind of minimal on scheming, but we also take your head off. So it was a lot harder to get in the gun. So take your off aspect got away. You kind of just left with minimal scheming. So after that, 3-11 to close out his postseason career. And was always in that spec where Matt Moore, AJ McCarron, and I believe Alex Smith.
Yeah, that's not in the war.
No.
Right. It's just winning battles, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at here. It's easier to sustain something. When you might lose the battle once in a while, but in the end, you're still winning the war. Meaning you're still making it to the championship games every other year. You're still winning more than one playoff game every other year. You're still you make it to the Super Bowl a couple times in your career. Blah blah blah. You walk off into the sunset with one. You know what I mean? You draft. Look, there's going to be a lot of guys that Bill Cowher drafted are going to make it into the Hall of Fame. We're just starting to get into some of them. Okay,
Yeah.
when you know what I mean, right? So
I have a question
with
for you.
yeah, go.
After, yeah, I did say, do you want to finish your thought first?
No, I'm good.
So here, I had a quick question for you. So how much differently will we look at Tomlin's resume had I don't think we lost the Super Bowl against the Packers due to Tomlin's coaching. I don't think he was the problem in that game at all. I think it was Ben trying to play hero ball, and it was the big sloppy mistakes by Mendenhall and others. How much differently will we look at Mike Tomlin if instead of going 5-1 through those first couple years, he went 6-0 with 2 Super Bowls?
Yeah, that would be a different. I think that would be a different view on Mike Tomlin because that was, with the exception of Ben, mostly his team.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the guys that he had. He only had one or two, three guys left from Bill Cowher era at that
True.
point, and that was mostly his team. So I think he would have been looked on as a little differently if he would have won that Super Bowl instead of losing it to Aaron Rodgers, right? We'd be talking about a different Mike Tomlin, I think, because one Super Bowl is all right, but when you get to do that second one,
Mm-hmm.
you get what I'm trying to tell you. Like every squirrel gets lucky once, you know,
Mostly.
right? But in the span of 2 years, you get another bite at that apple and you bring the trophy home.
Yeah.
That's a different Mike Tomlin.
I wonder how that affects his confidence. I mean, he never lacked confidence. Let's not get it twisted. But I wonder how that affects his coaching decisions through the next number of years. Does he
If he
kind of
wins
stick
that
with more
Super
of the
Bowl,
Yeah, I don't know. Does he stick with kind of the more players first initiative that he stuck with? Because he was a little bit more of a disciplinarian in the earlier years, if you can remember. Like that's why we lost in the '07 playoffs, is because like the
yeah,
team was just kind of worn down and
burnt.
run.
They were just
Yeah.
burnt out. Yeah, then he
Yeah.
wore them to the nub. You know what I mean? You can't do that. When you have a Ferrari, there is a reason why Ferrari doesn't allow you to take the car home. Yeah, right. You drop $2.3 million on a Ferrari Enzo, and they're like, "All right, thanks for signing the dotted lines. We'll take those keys. We'll see you when you come back. It'll be here waiting for you, all shiny and gassed up and ready to go." And right, you have to come to Maranello to go drive your car that you spent $2.3 million on. And there'll be a
Huh.
team of 25 guys that'll come out there and fix the tire pressures, make sure the oil's right, blah, 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 make sure the engine's up to temperature and the brakes are straight and blah, 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 whatever. And you get to go drive your car for however long you want around the track at Maranello. And then when you're done, you pack it away and they put it off into storage and you leave. Thank you. Have a nice day. Right? The point of this is that when you have a Ferrari, that's a highly tuned machine.
Mhm.
Pittsburgh was driving a Ferrari there with the killer bees, right? And Mike Tomlin drove it into the dirt and wore them guys out. You know what I mean? Trying to get, be the man. Trying to see, it's taken over, it's his team, which I get you have to do, but a finely tuned Ferrari, you got to drive it sparingly. You got to be nice to it. You got to heat
You
up
can't
the
go
end.
120 mile an hour every day.
Right. You got to do 200 every once in a while.
But no, I'm so conflicted on that era, and I'm glad you brought them up. Like that, I'm so conflicted on that era because I go so back and forth with it. Because on one hand, Ben, Bell, and Brown were probably the greatest trio of all time. You
And
could certainly make the argument.
they were better than Duper and Marino. They were better than Bradshaw and Swan. They had more
Easily.
touchdowns. They had more touchdowns, more yards, more catches. Now, okay, the era is different. There's a
Sure.
lot more look, let's face it. How many games do you think Terry Bradshaw had 50 attempts?
Probably not a lot.
That many.
I believe
Zero.
it.
You get what I'm saying? How many games does Ben have at 50 attempts? Oh, I don't know, 6 or 7,
Quite a few.
right? You're okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, and that's true. And like I really one of my favorite stats to bring up, I don't have the actual numbers offhand, but I do know that Ben and Antonio Brown didn't just beat Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison's numbers, they like crushed those numbers. So they were an absolutely monstrous duo.
They were on pace to eclipse the greatest Joe Montana and Jerry Rice.
Yeah, they were.
They were on pace to eclipse those guys. And look, okay, you got Tom Brady and Randy Moss for one season. So, yeah, okay, you put up 50 touchdowns, but let me see you do that for 4, 5, 6 years in a row, right? Like I said,
And remember they had another season. Because remember Brady got injured in '08, and then when he came back in '09, they still had Moss. So that's not they had that one good year, but that was not going to be replicable. Much like
exactly.
Ben and Brown, their numbers were replicable year after year.
And for a number of years in a row.
They would have been
Hey,
the greatest duo of all time. But honestly, maybe there's a reason why they never got there. And maybe that amount of ego just can't be contained. That amount of ego together can create two of the greatest players at their positions, but it will only hold them together for so long.
winning holds you together.
True.
When you ain't winning, then the antics off the field don't fly no more
True.
because now they're a distraction. Now they're an excuse. Now they're this, that, and everything else, right? If you winning, nobody cares what you're doing, right? Because
Hmm.
you're winning. Okay. Well, when you ain't winning no more, it's a different story.
That everything becomes magnified whenever you lose. It's just a very up and down. I feel like mixed martial arts has that worse than any other sport. But in football it's also very bad. Where just the highs are up here, but the lows are also just through the floor.
You have to understand something, right? Sports is cyclical, okay? And talent is cyclical,
Mm,
which is why you have like the greatest draft of all time, the 1984 draft. No, but you can go
that's one
back
of them.
10 years. You can go back 10 years and go, the greatest draft of all time, 1974. There were 6 Hall of Famers pulled out of that draft, right? What?
Mm.
4 of them went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hello? No, but you see what I'm saying, right?
That won't be replicated for sure.
So every couple years when the talent cycles, that's why there's so much parity in the league. That's why they have so many teams. That's why there's so many rounds of the draft. There's why, that's why they have all this stuff so that there can be talent spread to every single team.
And it's about how it's a big circle as well. I always find that part interesting, where you have moments where the run game is the most important thing, and then it switches to the pass game, and then back to the run game, back to the pass game. And we're seeing that, like, for a while, the NFL is getting wirier and skinnier and faster and smaller. And then all of a sudden, like, now it seems like a lot of people are trying out that, like, the two tight ends, the three tight ends. McVay almost made it to the championship running a lot of that kind of stuff. It just feels like everything, time is a flat circle, I believe is how the figure of speech goes. And it just seems like now we're entering back into big men bully ball era. So that'll be fun to watch.
It's the same way in hockey, right? You get these smaller, faster guys that can score goals that play defense. They're listed as defensemen, right? But they're under 6 foot. They're under 200 pounds. Okay, yeah, they put up 20 or 30 goals a year, but they're a minus 30 or 40 on the season because they're playing defense and they're on the ice when the other team scores. So, so every team that's won championships all have big defensemen that play defense and stay at home and take you out when you're trying to come into their opposition. right? And all these teams that were thinking, oh yeah, let's go small and fast and small and fast. Well, okay, but you only can handle one or two of those guys on your team, right? The rest of the team needs to be, Daryl Washington, right? You can only have two or three Gainwells on your team, but you need to have a whole lot of Darnell Washingtons on your team.
I agree. I think a big part of it that a lot of teams overlook, Miami especially, is overlooked in years past, where it's about finding a style that's going to play well for you through the end of the year. Not being able to produce points in January is like, much worse than not being able to produce points in the regular season. And that's a big like problem that like Miami, they would go into like January against like, I don't know, Buffalo or whoever they would play. And their teams would freeze to death and they'd fall off a cliff. It's tough.
That's been the problem with Pittsburgh's offense since the end of Ben Roethlisberger.
I would say around 2017. That was the end of the Killer Bees era. Ben kind of started to get into his check down mode, and then he injured his arm right after. Like I feel like we've been on this island of offense for a long time.
Where we're not trying to open it. Nobody's scared of the Steelers offense. you know, like they
Nobody's scared
roll
of the
in.
Steelers going five. Like how Brady would like he would line up in shotgun and then he would audible and everybody would just go five wide all of a sudden. Like and you would kind of think, oh snap, like this is a problem.
Same thing happened
No
when Ben was
one.
doing it. Right
Yeah,
when
but
when
no
Ben
one
would
has
do
that
that, yeah,
now.
yeah, that doesn't happen anymore now. Aaron Rodgers is
When Ben
standing
would
out there and got five wide receivers out there, and they're all like, "Yeah, we coming."
when Ben would do it, what were we gonna say? When Ben would
No,
do
I'm
it?
saying Ben would do the same thing, right? He would do an audible, and then suddenly there's five wide, and you're like, "Oh snap, here we go!" Right? Because he's calling out man to man, and now there's suddenly five receivers, and you got a guy going in motion that's going to run out to the flat. You're like, "All right, I get
I
it."
did that with a video with Ben and the Packers with that duel with Aaron Rodgers, where at one point Ben points out at Heath Miller because he realized that he had was it BJ Raji on him in
Yeah,
one-on-one coverage with Heath
yeah,
Miller. And Ben's like,
yeah.
"Do you see this stuff?" Like those moments of pointing at the field are just the best, man. That
Right.
communication.
So, all in all, what do you think about the Steelers coaching staff to this point right now? I mean, I think we're pretty much set. We got everybody in place now. We got the entire coaching staff is in place from the head coach all the way down to the strength coordinators. What do you think?
I think that retaining the quarterbacks coach is probably a good move. You don't want to just have a complete wiping of the board, so to speak. I don't know much about Patrick Graham, but I've heard he's solid. Like his defenses in, let's say, Las Vegas haven't been the best, but they also haven't had any talent outside of Max Crosby,
True.
especially after they got rid of Khalil Mack.
True.
And so the fact that like he actually puts up like halfway decent middle of the pack units with absolutely virtually zero talent to work with, I think is actually probably an encouraging sign. Like at least maybe we'll see some switch ups and maybe some in-game adjustments from Patrick. So that'd be cool.
Wow, in-game adjustments. I got to write
I
that down.
know, right? Just
I got to write that
crazy
down.
concept.
In-game adjustments. What the frick is that?
Not just hoping for someone to jump a route one of these times. Like who could ever have thought about such a thing? But I'm gonna do more digging. I do find that the fact that we don't know a lot of these names. I mean, I know some of them are more well known than others, but the fact that this isn't a mass list of horrible retreads or anything, I think is a decent enough sign. I think the fact that we're filling positions we weren't filling before is also a very good sign. And I think that Mike McCarthy delegating as much of the responsibility to other people. I know he said he's going to call plays, but the less he can, what would make me feel really good if I could just leave off on this point. It would make me feel really good and would actually make me feel a lot more secure going into this year is if Mike McCarthy got some kind of clock coordinator. I know that a lot of teams are doing that now. I know San Fran's done that. I want anybody, and I can't stress this part enough, pal, and I will let you get to your stuff. But like just the one point I want to leave off on is anybody can take over clock management that's not him, I think that's a path to victory.
Maybe with our senior offensive assistant,
True.
Frank Signetti Jr., maybe that might be his responsibility.
Possibly. I will take
Fingers
it.
Crossed.
Anyone, man.
Seriously? Because, look, that's been the huge factor for Pittsburgh the last couple of seasons, man. Well, pretty much most of the entire Tomlin era is very poor clock management, poor decisions being made on fourth down. I look, the more eyes on that, the better. I think the more information you have from different sources, I think the better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and
especially for older coaches where it's a little harder to teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, I didn't even have to say a word. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Derek. Thank you. Hey, by the way, no, you don't have to. Please don't apologize for being right. Okay, seriously. By the way, big shout out to my main man, Mr. Gage. Ryan, happy birthday, brother.
Oh, thank you. I know your birthday's coming up tomorrow too, right?
Yeah, man.
Happy birthday, pal.
Yeah,
Got
we
two
got the birthday
Aquariuses in the
boys.
building.
All right. How cool is that, right? So, look, we're both very excited, but cautiously optimistic about this upcoming season with McCarthy. I think the coaching staff I'm hoping is going to be a breath of fresh air. I'm hoping we're getting better than a C minus as a grade for a coaching staff because I'm not really all that excited about McCarthy as coach to begin with. So, if he comes out in the first season and we get 6 wins, okay, color me happy. Because I think the next 2 seasons for Pittsburgh are going to be the turning point in this franchise's history. And the
building block years.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm saying that is because, look, there's talent on this team. There is. Clearly, there's talent on this team. I mean, you got the most expensive defense on the planet. So there's definitely some talent on the defense. And you and I both feel that the offense is potentially there, but there's some spots that are lacking, like wide receiver. You need more than one guy that doesn't drop 4 balls a game. Okay, right? If you say you're going to use the tight ends, then use them. They can catch the ball too. Get a guy that's more than 4'11" and weighing 101 pounds, soaking wet, being your featured offensive player. Now, look.
He did do really well, though. I got to give Gainwell credit. He did so much better than I thought he would.
Look, kudos to him. He did really awesome. He took advantage of the situation and did the best that he possibly could with that situation, right? And I'm not trying to take anything away from the man, okay? But you can't feature that guy. You can't, okay? He was keyed in on, and he's too small to make any kind of difference. And he's not strong enough to break tackles or anything like that. You get what I'm saying, right? So,
yeah.
And he wasn't the guy running it up, blowing the top off, right? Running down the sideline. He wasn't that guy, okay? So, I think there's talent there. Can McCarthy, this new coaching staff, can they get the most out of the talent more so than what Tomlin was able to do?
Cautiously optimistic. I think it's a good way to cap it all off.
It is cautiously optimistic, man. We're looking forward to it, but we're kind of doing one of these things. Like we can sort of see through, but sort of not. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
Okay, right. Gage, thanks, man, for doing this. Appreciate you being on here, brother. we're not stopping.
Nope.
We're gonna keep
Nope.
on keeping on, man. So we had to have take a little break here because I had to have a little surgery on my hand. But we're getting back into the swing of it here, man, and I can't wait to start rolling again. So, Gage, why don't
Mhm.
you tell the folks where we can find all your great stuff, my man?
You can find all my contender, or you can find all my MMA content at Contender MMA, and you can find myself, Steel, Frayne, and Steve for all of our Steeler content you can't find on this channel over at Five Star Matchup.
For sure, man. Be sure to follow all that great stuff. Be sure to check out the YouTube channel there for the Huddle, and make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, especially if you like what we're doing here, man. And we really appreciate that. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I'm your co-host Ron Mott. You can find me on X at RNJ_media. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel for all the episodes of the Huddle that we did this past year, and get notification for the next one, man. We will catch you guys on the next Huddle, a Black and Gold podcast.